Changing up the backdrop a little bit today, Caius joins us as a playable character finally for the global side of the game, alongside of Noel's EX Plus realization. Really quickly, before we talk about these two, I'm just going to say I do believe that this is probably one of the more desirable of the Mayfair campaign banners. Both Golbez and Eiko are actually relatively solid units. Sure, they're a bit outclassed, but they still service the job just well, especially if you pull for them and, decide to move for the team. Eiko is a very prominent Brave Battery healer type support with a good Holy Imperil to open up for other Holy type characters, and as well as for herself to do damage. And Golbez is still a relatively strong dark physical and melee DPS with a Dark Imperil to help open up for damage. Now, obviously, I do still believe that this is another banner that you should just ride it out with the free multis on, as, like I said, both these characters are just a little bit outclassed. If you are a newer player, we have this banner here if you're in need of DPS, and then this banner here if you're in need of support. So when it comes to these two characters specifically, they are a little outclassed, and I wouldn't really recommend digging too deep unless they are favorites of yours that you missed out on from previous banners. But anyway, let's go ahead and get back into the main banner that we're talking about, and let's go ahead and start off with Noel. So Noel only got an EX Plus, and my God, is it so little? Like, it's kind of disappointing. Now, Noel is already a very strong character. Right? He's basically the pseudo Vayne, two elements built into his kit. He has good DPS, good ability activations on breaks. He ignores defense altogether with his EX. His EX Plus pretty much just makes the EX hit harder and gives him access to Fear Siphon Plus, which is now 3 hit, a Brave Gravity effect, as well as it followed up by a 2-hit regular hit Brave attack that, if breaks a target or attacks a broken target, will give him a free ability usage next turn. That's still pretty cool. It also no longer has any action delay upon using it, so Noel can act right again, but it still does affect the turn count, which is kind of it kind of sucks a little bit, solely just because of that, because if you do rely on it too heavily, it could rack up the turn count pretty quickly, and unfortunately you do have to find yourself relying on that, as Noel does have a small amount of ability usages being capped out at 13. As a character overall, Noel is one of the more powerful DPS units that we've seen, solely just because he does a lot of damage with turn delay shenanigans tossed in there. I do, though, however, believe that he is almost important to Chaos Era. A very powerful DPS unit at that, but solely just for the fact that Fear Siphon still affects the turn count, can really hurt your turn count in the long run, as well as if the boss absorbs either of the ice or wind element, Noel is going to be sitting on the out on the bench. Not only that, like, even though he does have some impressive stuff, we already have characters, which I hate throwing her into this because she definitely doesn't belong in this era for the Chaos Era, but Aranea. We also have Vayne, who heavily outclasses him in terms of what he excels in. I would say he does more damage than Vayne. I think that anyway, but Vayne is more consistent. Vayne gets refreshes on his abilities. Vayne's longevity is most definitely there. He gets many free turns. Like, Vayne actually helps the turn count considerably and much more consistent. So I do believe that Vayne is the better of the two. So even though he is a very powerful DPS and can fulfill the role just fine, I do believe that he is currently outclassed by specific characters that do what he's supposed to do better, but nonetheless, he's still a very powerful DPS unit who will fulfill that role, and if you do choose to build him up, like, I don't even want to say it, but since he is a DPS unit, you really want to prioritize on maximum damage, so 3 out of 3 if you do choose to build him up. Now, for the main unit on the banner, Caius. Caius is a jack of a few trades, master of none, and we'll talk about that. Caius has good damage. He has a stackable frame buff, which works as a Brave and HP regen versus a stat booster, which is actually really neat. when you do get at max stats, both of his abilities will go to their plus variants, which just they hit harder. I believe his second ability gets better AoE options. They just hit harder, do more hits, and things like that. His second ability inflicts 4 frame debuffs, speed down. Max brave down. Max brave down, a defense down, only by 30% for the two of them. A poison and a doom effect. These are all frame, which helps out against buff heavy bosses. And we all know what the doom effect does. If you do not, and you are new to the game, the doom effect is a countdown that when the debuff goes off, it will auto break the target and push them back. It's pretty unique to have a character that does so. Caius also gets a unique icon that will actually save him at 1 HP and restore his health if his HP is at 1 or lower, which is possible. But it also increases his stats, but it will go away if you do have to use it, and there is no way to refresh it. So it pretty much just gives him a second chance at life, which is pretty cool. His EX hits hard. At max EX plus, it executes twice, has 200% overflow, does a lot of damage. His EX plus gives him access to 3 of the stackable frame buff at the beginning of the quest, as well as his other one, which his other frame buff, which increases his attack, max brave, and max overflow. Which, by the way, I forgot to mention that both of his abilities will give him 2 stacks of his stackable frame buff, so you really only have to use 1 to get the plus variants. He gets a very powerful HP attack plus, which is a 3-hit single target HP attack with 120% overflow. Both of his brave attack and HP attack can actually give him 1 stack of the stackable frame buff, as well as his EX, which can delay by 1 turn and give him a stack of the stackable frame buff. And also extend all of his current existing buffs by 2 turns. His C65 is set to extend, which will is a, I believe it's 2 hits, single target HP attack, which auto sets the doom and extends his buffs by a turn, which is pretty cool. I could be wrong about the extending buffs, but I could have swore I remember reading that. You'll see it appear up on the infographic. Don't you worry about that. But anyway, it sounds like Caius has a lot to his kit, which he actually does. And what I said before actually really stands. So Caius is a pretty all-around built character. I also did forget to mention that X does auto launch on the target that it's attacking. 50% splash damage will be going to the other target, but doing 50% chase value to the other target, so they are auto set up for a launch next turn. So it has good AoE option, delays, and sets up the other opponent for launch while automatically launching the target you're attacking, which is really cool. The problem with the EX though is, however, it does have a slightly slow recharge, which doesn't translate to slightly slow. It is slow, like very slow. Like, trust me, it's slow. Like, it's not sync slow, but it's slow. And Selfie is his best friend, by the way. And what I was saying before is, albeit while he does quite a bit of things, he doesn't really excel all too well in many of those regards. As a DPS unit specifically, he is outclassed by current characters that we have already. He does do solid damage and can hit really hard, as a matter of fact. But compared to other characters like that we have currently, the damage is just a little bit off there. His frame debuffs are actually really nice, but we do have other characters that can fulfill the debuffer role much better than what Caius can do, especially since the stat drops that he's offering aren't all too great. I mean, 30% does sound pretty nice, but it's not as good as it could be compared to someone like Noel or someone like Fran. And Fran has probably one of the best debuffs in the game and hits hard as fuck. So, like, it's not comparative to that. Really, the only big plus about him being a debuffer is that they're all framed, and he sets up for it. So he really helps against buff-heavy bosses, and even against bosses that auto-cleanse, because all you really have to do is just use the second skill again. Another big problem that Caius has is with his EX being absurdly slow. he doesn't have that many ability usages and has no ways of refreshing or gaining free ability usages. You do have to rely on the HP Attack Plus a lot, which then makes it so the EX comes up a lot slower. There is a lot of stuff that Caius can do well and good, but he's not really mastering any of the stuff that he does. The launch mechanic is nice, and the delay mechanic is nice, but it's practically unreliable considering how slow this EX actually is. If you're looking for characters with better launch, Lael, Cloud, Tifa, hers is built into her EX, but it's still much more consistent than Caius's because it comes up much quicker. I hate to say it, but Tifa's EX just vastly outclasses Caius in terms of reliability. Sure, Caius does just a little bit more because it's AoE and executes twice, but Tifa still hits hard as hell, and she's more suited for bosses anyway. But hers is still much more reliable because it still comes up quickly, while Caius does not. So, with all of this said, how is Caius for the Chaos era? Don't get me wrong, I did list off quite a bit of cons, and it may seem like Caius is not that great of a character. Caius is definitely usable, and he does have a relatively powerful kit overall. But, because of those specific cons, it does drag him down into the not-so-important side of the characters that we have. He is a good character, and as long as you are willing to work around the shortcomings that he does have an offer to himself, you can make the character work. Like I said, Selphie is his best friend, as well as other characters that offer very potent brave regens, and as they can stack with his as they stack with frame buff. So he works best alongside of characters much like that to really start capping out on damage, because you can essentially then rely on the HP Attack Plus a little bit better. So characters like Selphie, characters like Beatrix, characters like I had one character in mind, but I lost it. But you should know who I'm talking about when I say characters with very important bravery gen. As long as you slap a character just like that alongside Caius, you can micromanage some of the faults that he has. But like I said, Selphie is his best friend to get that EX up and running much quicker. But anyway, that's pretty much that. Caius is not so important. Noel is almost important. It's just I feel like he's just outclassed by other characters that we have that pretty much run his job, but he will fulfill, both of these characters could fulfill the role that they have set up for themselves for you just fine. Just know that there are other characters that we have that service their specific roles just a little, just for Caius just better, and then for Noel just a little bit. But anyway, guys, that'll pretty much wrap it up for me on this one. If you are pulling into this banner because they are either favorites of yours or you still want to pull regardless, if you were a new player or anything, let me know down below how you did, how your luck was. I wish you guys the best of luck pulling into this banner, and hope you run away with the EXs that you are looking for. But anyway, guys, that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, before we close out the video, I would like to say a big thank you to the Tonberry Troop with the lovely infographics that they always display for these characters. I'm going to keep saying it every single time, so just be prepared. But if you are not following them on their on any of their social media platforms that I am currently aware of, such as their Facebook and Reddit, feel free to go give them a follow. They are a wonderful community, wonderful group, and help out the community a ton with these amazing infographics, and they're always willing to answer questions. So go check out the Tonberry Troop. Thank you so much to them for the lovely infographics. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.